Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by HipChat. Bring your team to life with persistent team chat, file sharing, and integrations with the software you use. A team communication tool built for business. HipChat is free forever, and HipChat Plus, including video and screen sharing, is free for 6 months for the first 1,000 listeners at hipchat.com/twist. And by LeadGenius. Higher quality leads and customized customer data at scale. Schedule a free demo at leadgenius.com.
Hey everybody, an amazing episode of This Week in Startups. Cameron Teitelman is with me. He founded StartX. What is StartX, you ask? StartX is the nonprofit accelerator from Stanford. They help companies over 10 weeks with a ton of mentorship. It's sort of like YCombinator, except they don't take any equity, and then they give money and they have an investment arm. This is an amazing story of a 26-year-old who is super smart and was part of the cast of Les Mis on Broadway. I mean, this is like some savant kid who created something in the Valley that is competitive with YCombinator, as good as YCombinator, according to the people I talked to. And he did it all as a nonprofit. It's an amazing, inspiring story. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. And on this show, we talk about startup companies, and really, the most important moment in any startup is when it starts. That moment that the founder or founders decide, enough, I'm going to get off the bench and I'm going to go do something meaningful and important in my life. The starting point is the magical moment. And honestly, for every thousand people who have a great idea, less than one start. I would say for every million people who have a great idea, one person starts. Starting is hard for a lot of people. And let me tell you something, finishing is even harder. But just that act of starting, getting off the bench and saying, I'm going to try to make this idea into a reality is so difficult. Now, one of the things that's happened over the years is that accelerators or incubators have emerged, like YCombinator, Techstars, Rock Health, Tummel, Highway 1, Launch Incubator, a bunch of them. And what these incubators, accelerators do is they take somebody with a great idea and they take them through the maybe 12 weeks or so of how to turn an idea into a reality. Or sometimes they take an MVP, a minimal viable product, and they work with the founder to get it to launch and to get traction, to then raise more money, to keep the startup journey alive. Now, one of those accelerators and incubators is called StartX. It's basically associated with Stanford in some way. We'll find out in a minute exactly how it's affiliated. And this one has been getting a lot of buzz because hundreds of companies have gone through it and they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. The founder of StartX is Cameron Teitelman, and you started this as a non-profit.
Yeah, crazy.
So you basically decided you're going to help build the next Airbnb, Dropbox, Uber, whatever, and not get rich off of it. Are you feeling okay?
That's right.
Cameron, are you okay?
I'm great, yeah.
Okay, so first, tell us when you started StartX and why you decided to go with the nonprofit concept.
Sure. So it was in 2009. I was actually an undergrad at Stanford, and I was building companies. And what happened is I kind of was a bit frustrated with the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a whole.
What was frustrating about it for you?
I had friends who were going into banking and consulting or clean tech startups or all this other stuff, and the structures at Stanford to help them learn how to do that and the path afterwards, the support structure was very clear. And with all my friends who were building companies, we tried to use some of the structures at Stanford and even got investment from advisors. And it was more of a just figure it out. And if you're successful, come back to me.
Sure.
And there wasn't some sort of something designed for founders to help them kind of know what to focus on and then also get over that hurdle.
So if you want to be a banker.
No, I didn't want to be a banker.
No, but I think if you do, the banks are on campus looking for whip-smart people to come waste their lives doing like Excel spreadsheets and financial models. Yet, to do a startup, and actually create value in the world, there is no bridge there.
There wasn't. There were a lot of classes, and these classes kind of gave an overview of what entrepreneurship is.
Right.
And then there were funds, and they'd fund people they thought were great, and then at that point, a lot of the funds weren't focusing on actually helping the founders that much.
Right.
It was more networking for them rather than like practical help. And so one of the things that I did when I was at Stanford is I actually used the classes to build my companies. And so I would take decision analysis or some business classes, and I'd actually pretend I wasn't working on my company in them and actually work on my company through those classes. And through that, I actually really learned those concepts and were able to apply them to date. So I thought that there was something wrong with the ecosystem, or I was surprised that it wasn't more efficient.
Yeah, you would think, just like they have career placement, they would have startup placement.
Yeah.
Or some sort of bridge between the funds that do like to invest in, founders from Stanford and actually the classes.
Yeah, and these accelerators weren't really popular at that point.
Yeah.
So
This
was
is what time frame?
2009.
2009.
Yeah. And so what I did is
early days of YCombinator.
Yeah, and so Steve Blank was one of my professors. And so this was before the whole lean startup thing, and he was just talking about customer development. So I kind of took his advice. I went out and talked to a couple hundred Stanford alums, everyone from the LinkedIn, PayPal guys to a lot of people who failed, and tried to figure out if there was some sort of pattern between the ones who succeeded multiple times once and the ones who failed. And there actually was a really clear pattern. And it was really interesting. I was like, okay. So the ones who were successful built this support structure around themselves. And basically what they were getting is the type of thing you get in a big company, where if you need help on something, you have someone that you can access that's already vetted. They're good at helping you. And you kind of had some sort of context on what you needed to work on next or what to prioritize. And the guys who failed, they were just kind of floundering. They didn't know what roadblocks were ahead of them, what kind of landmines there were, and they couldn't access high-quality people to help them in real time.
No mentorship, no roadmap, no way to prioritize.
Yeah, exactly. And so after that conversation, it was really clear that if there was some better structure to make the overall Stanford ecosystem more efficient. And basically, it was just kind of copying what the guys who had built billion-dollar companies did for themselves. They would create these peer networks where they'd share inside information. They'd share kind of who's good at what, who will do stuff to you that you don't want them to do to you.
Who to avoid.
Yeah, who to avoid.
The blacklist.
Exactly.
Who's on that blacklist?
Yeah.
I wonder. What, like bad actors, like bad VCs?
Yeah, bad VCs, lawyers, experts, people who would kind of... I'll say this, like in the dot-com time, a lot of people got funding for funds, not necessarily people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's true. I was there.
Yeah. So,
yeah, no, it was incredible. Like when I was your age, probably, like in my 20s, like I would watch people who I knew were absolutely stupid make a lot of money. And then I'd watch really brilliant people not get the money. And I was this is very weird. Like, and it was really like a really good life lesson. Where you learn, like, hey, sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about the moment in time, timing, what vertical you picked, getting lucky. So much of it is out of your control, isn't it?
Yeah, so a lot of it was out of your control. And so I was trying to figure out what is in your control. What is the actual system you can put around yourself to make you successful, to reduce the chance of failure, and maybe make you fail faster if the thing isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, with that research, I went to one of our advisors and said, okay, wow, if we can help people fail faster, or the ones who are going to be successful faster.
Sure.
That can, let me put it this way. The Stanford alumni founders have founded 40,000 companies. And that's $2.7 trillion in annual revenue, which makes it the 11th largest country.
Wow.
So
Stanford founders.
Stanford alumni founders.
Okay. Have... what number?
40,000 companies.
40,000 companies is ridiculous, okay.
And from a revenue perspective, that's around $2.7 trillion.
Right, because you have Google in there right off the bat. It's a couple of $100 billion.
Yes.
So it's like, of the 2.x trillion, you got like 20% of it's at least Google, right?
A good percentage, yeah.
And what's the next one on the list like that?
There's LinkedIn, there's Sun, there's HP.
Wow.
You can just go down the list, Palantir,
yeah,
et cetera.
Yeah.
And the
So it's clearly there's something in the water at Stanford.
Yeah, and there's a great support system around it. And
it happens to be that they're self-selecting for people who are interested in, right? You go to Stanford because you want, in a lot of cases, to be an entrepreneur. All right, when we get back, I want to understand what the deal is between you and the startups, and if it's a 12-week program, and how it is like YCombinator and how it isn't like YCombinator when we get back on This Week in Startups. I don't even have to read an ad here because I use HipChat every day, all day long. I have literally 75 different employees and contractors in HipChat, and I can tell you, email is god-awful. When people start sending me a ton of emails, I'm like, why are we discussing this here? Get in a HipChat room, mention the people who need to know this, and let's just solve the problem in chat right now. No nonsense, right? Get us off that email and the reply all wars. And IM has no integration with other tools. And when we're using HipChat for the Launch Festival or for This Week in Startups or for Inside, we're constantly using different products like Zapier or If This Then That to shoot notifications into the chat room. So for example, when This Week in Startups is published, or I publish something on my blog, the RSS feed saying a new blog post was up on calacanis.com comes into the chat room, so all of my employees know I just blogged something. If we post when we post the episodes of the show, the RSS feed for the show with the podcast also does that. When somebody posts a comment on a blog, boom, that can be put in there. When there's server issues, those can be put in there. When people submit stories or comments to inside.com, all of my writers get a note and it says, hey, somebody commented on the site. Maybe you want to go and reply to their comment and make them feel at home. All these incredible integrations. They're integrated with Jira, GitHub, Bitbucket, and 50 more. And here's the killer. They have native apps for Linux, iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, etc. So it's super stable. You can use it on any platform. I would say at least a third of my notes on HipChat happen on my iOS device, my iPhone 6 Plus. Here's what I do. I take a screenshot of something on the site that I don't like. I put it in Sketch. I put notes on it in Sketch. Then I paste that image into my chat room and say, hey, not good enough. Make it better. Let's keep working, people. Let's get to work here. Anyway, you get the idea. It's just so goddamn productive. I love it. Clients include Netflix, Dropbox, Salesforce, obviously Launch, and This Week in Startups, as well as Insight. It is free forever for the regular service. But if you want to get HipChat Plus like we have, you can do video and screen sharing, which is awesome. And those are free for the first 6 months if you go to hipchat.com/twist. Hipchat.com/twist gets 6 months free. We love it. Persistent chat rooms are so important. All right, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. My guest today is Cameron Teitelman of StartX. You can follow StartX on Twitter, StartX. And it's startx.stanford.edu. It's the incubator, accelerator, that is somehow affiliated with Stanford. And you can follow Cameron at CJTMAN on Twitter. Now, Cameron, when we left, we're talking about, just the amazing knowledge base and, founders who've come out of Stanford. You create StartX. How does it manifest itself as a program today? And what would people expect to get out of it? Because when you join YCombinator, you expect to get $100,000 and give them 6 or 7%, whatever the deal is, in common shares. And you expect to go to 12 dinners. And you expect to go out on a demo day, this time with, I think, 112 companies, is what I heard this one is. For this YCombinator, what happens at StartX?
Yeah, so we have a similar structure. It's 10 weeks. And what we do that's a little bit different in this is our focus as a nonprofit because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, is we kind of evaluate the individual founder's strengths and weaknesses, what milestones they need to hit over the course of the 10 weeks, and what skills they need to develop in order for them to be able to hit those milestones.
How do you evaluate their skill sets? Is there a test like the SATs or something that you deploy? And what do you think are the important aspects?
Yeah, so it's mainly through interviews. We have our kind of a pretty intensive interview process to get in. So we kind of have our initial profile, and then throughout the program, we have mentors, coaches, other founders, and the founders themselves tell us basically what they need help with.
Got it.
And so through that, what we do is we do kind of a series of things to help them develop those skills and kind of fix up some of their weaknesses.
So what are the typical weaknesses that somebody coming out of college wanting to start a company has when it comes to entrepreneurship?
So out of college, some of it is really basic, like how to set goals week to week. Just really basic, or how to give feedback. How to build company culture, stuff like that. How to utilize a mentor effectively. How to be coached, how to build your peer network in a way.
So really how to learn.
Yes.
It's very basic stuff. It's not like here's something tactical. It's more like here's how to go about getting the tactical advice you need.
So we focus on kind of the kind of meta lessons like that. And then there's a lot of the skill development, which is very tactical and customized to their specific company. So like the health IT companies or even the medical device companies will have like FDA consulting or grant writing training or that sort of thing.
Got it. Where do you get all these advisors from for this 10-week program? And how are they compensated? Because it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, so everyone's a volunteer. All the advisors, 100% volunteer time, and we have around over 600. Everything from people like Mike Cassidy or Konstantin Grecki, the co-founder of LinkedIn, who will spend an hour a week with a company as like a personal coach and kind of a founder coach. And then we have an advisory board structure where people have either a VC or if they're a medical company, a doctor or consumer, some serial entrepreneur on their advisory board to help with strategic help. And then there's a couple hundred experts, which we have categorized in every industry and kind of functional area.
Yeah.
So a founder says, hey, I need help with this in the next 2 weeks. We'll bring in someone for a workshop, an office hours, or a phone call, or they can get help from other founders in the program or their mentors. That's basically how it works for us. And we do like 100 events in a session.
100 events over the 10 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's all
10 per week.
Yes, but it's all, roughly, but it's all customized to what the individual founders need.
Got it.
So one person maybe will do 16.
How many founders are there per cohort? And do I have to have a startup idea, or like the Founders Institute, let's say, can I just come in and say, I want to be a founder?
Yeah, so you need to have a product. And so at least a prototype. And so it's interesting. Our companies are everything from prototype up to 40 people. Accepted.
Wow.
And so we have...
if you have 40 people, then you must have raised at least an A or B round.
Yeah. So we've had some companies come in that have already raised 30 to 50 million.
Well, what do they need you for if they've raised that amount of money? That seems a little bit weird to me.
Exactly. And so because we're very customized on what the founders need, and we have mentors and experts in every kind of discipline, and they've already all built billion-dollar companies.
Right.
A founder will come in and maybe they want to know how operationally they grow a company from 40 to 100.
Got it. Okay.
Or how do they, cross the chasm?
And so because you don't take 5 or 6 or 7% of the company for some small amount of cash and providing the services, I guess if you're a 30 or 40 person company, it's like, yeah, this is great free customized mentorship.
Exactly.
So if nobody makes money, how do you pay your rent? How does this organization, and how many full-time people are there today in 2015?
Yeah, so we have 16 full-time.
Okay, so that's you have a $3 million budget a year or something.
Yeah, roughly. No, it's about 2 million. And most
Where
of our
did that $2 million come from?
So you asked kind of how we're affiliated with Stanford. And
yes.
Initially, we were actually a part of the student government at Stanford. And then
the student government?
Yeah, the student government, which was, they have this business arm called Stanford Student Enterprises, which is like an 80-person company, all student run. And they had a venture capital fund. We were part of that, basically. And then we spun out of that as a separate nonprofit. And kind of had really no official tie to Stanford except for a massive amount of grassroots kind of just relationships with professors and students. And then just not this September, the previous September, 2013, we made a formal partnership with Stanford University.
Got it.
And Stanford Hospital, which is a separate company.
So you were kind of operating as Stanford's unofficial incubator accelerator.
Yeah.
And then something came to a head where they said, like, hey, let's officially sanction this, I guess.
Yeah, well, we went back and we said, look, we're getting all the best companies out of Stanford, and not only recent students, but people who are 10 years out. People who have already founded 1,000-person companies, people who they want as influential members of the Stanford community they want involved.
Right.
And we're kind of galvanizing that community to help itself.
Got it.
So we went to them and said, hey, look, you should financially support us. Before that, we had gotten funding from like the Kauffman Foundation.
Groovy.
Kind of
for entrepreneurship.
Yes, yeah, and they gave us
a grant.
a big grant.
That's great.
We had funding from companies like Microsoft and Intuit and Johnson & Johnson and
people who want to get in with the founders.
Yeah, and that was more corporate sponsorships.
Got it.
And then Stanford agreed to give us a big grant, about $1.2 million a year.
Fantastic. So that pays for the office and the space and the people. Yeah. But you also have a VC arm now. Yeah. You have a fund that's not de minimis in any way. That's actually funding these companies. When we get back from this break, I want you to explain how much money you have, how you decide to write the checks, and how that fund is going. Is it a nonprofit fund or is it an evergreen fund? When we get back on This Week in Startups. Yes, LeadGenius. This company is so genius, I invested in it, and now I'm reading ads for a company that I invested in and that my sales team is going crazy for. How does it work? I don't even have to look at this copy. I can just look you in the eyes and tell you. They have our sales database at LeadGenius. We let them come in there. They send emails to our best prospects, and they find prospects for us out on the web. And they engage them as if they're us, right? So they'll send that first message on behalf of my sales team. Hey, wanted to let you know about the Launch Hackathon. Here's why it's a great event. Then when my sales team comes in the morning, they've had 25 outgoing emails go out before my sales team even arrives. And these are early risers. Then 5 or 6 of those have replied. It's like coming to work and there's a pot of gold on their desk. All of these clients are already teed up for them. It is amazing. Then we had 800 or so clients who were unresponsive. We had LeadGenius take those 800 clients, targets, I should say, those leads, and find similar leads at the company. So, hey, this director of marketing wasn't talking, but the director of product or the director of PR or the HR person, they might, if we tell them about the Launch Hackathon, they might engage. That reactivated like 10% of our client base. This is amazing, and it costs us just dollars per lead. Super cheap. In fact, the work they're doing is so effective because they are experts at curating leads. What this means is it would cost me at least $10,000 to $20,000 a month to do this on my own. It would cost me at least $150,000, $250,000 a year. They do it for a fraction of that. And when I say a fraction, I mean like 10%. They scour the web for public and proprietary data. They scrutinize that info to find the best customers at scale, and they import it directly into your CRM. So just cleaning your CRM system, your sales system, which your salespeople, we all know, they hate doing that kind of work. LeadGenius loves doing that work. And your salespeople then, because they don't have to maintain all the CRM stuff and all the records, guess what? They have more time to spend with your clients, and that's what you want. Stripe, Signify, and Launch Festival, and This Week in Startups use it. Go to leadgenius.com/twist for a free audit and critique of your company's sales process. Leadgenius.com/twist, leadgenius.com/twist, leadgenius.com/twist. And other people who've watched the program have now gotten on the LeadGenius train, and the LeadGenius train is a fast train to success. Let's get back to this amazing episode. Thank you at LeadGenius. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups, where we run a professional operation with cliffhangers, and we reintroduce the hosts, because I got a really great Emmy Award-winning producer, Jackie, and a director, and Jacob, who keep me on my toes and make me say things like, welcome back to the show, and here's who's on the show. It's Cameron Teitelman, and he is the founder of StartX. Pretty cool, dude. And he's been running it since 2009-ish. Yes,
we launched the first program in summer 2010. Did the initial kind of setup in 2009.
Amazing. And $707 million raised, approximately $3 million per startup.
3.1, yeah.
Wow. And 100, who's counting? 160 companies have gone through it, at least.
Well, we're actually up to 220 now.
220. So how many per cohort? How many per class in cohort? And how many cohorts per year?
It's been growing. It's been growing like a bunch. This last cohort, the one that's just about that's graduating, is 40 companies. Yes. And one of the first couple classes were like 8 and 5.
Is there a demo day?
Yes.
Cool. When is that? Yes. I want to go to that.
Yeah, so the demo day probably will already have happened by the time this
show, airs. So it's going to be soon.
But it's
who can come to a demo day for people who don't know?
Yeah, so
it's limited to
investors. Investors that we know that have helped our companies, that our companies request.
Or how many people will be in the audience for a demo day typically?
Upwards of 200.
Okay. Where do you host that, at Stanford?
At our office, which is 2627 Hanover Street. It's about 3 blocks off campus.
Got it. And
we
how
have this
many?
Nice big office is awesome.
Beautiful. So you have 40 companies go on stage. They get 2 minutes each, 3 minutes each?
So we don't do what normal accelerators do. It's not all our demo days are for our entire community. So one thing that we kind of similar to what I said about kind of galvanizing the whole Stanford community to help itself.
Yeah.
We have we kind of think of ourselves as an agent or as a partner with all the companies that go through our program. Mm-hmm. And so we have a bunch of
alumni.
Including alums. So this is actually only the companies that this is the right time frame for them to fundraise in the entire community. So only maybe 50% of the current class will actually go up on demo day because they've either already raised or they're raising later. And then the other 50% are alums. And they're raising their Series A's, Series B's.
Got it.
So I think this time around we'll have around 25 companies.
Cool. And they get a couple minutes each on stage? They pitch?
3.
They say how much they're raising?
No.
They're allowed
Sometimes
to. Aren't they allowed to now? Because they're
allowed
they're
to.
all accredited, right?
They're allowed to. I don't know if it's the best thing for them to do from just a strategic perspective. Some of them do, but there's always the classic thing all the companies say where, oh yeah, I've already closed half my round. If you want anything else, come in. So
yes, ask for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a pretty pointed question here. Why should a Stanford startup pick you over YCombinator?
I think when people are building companies or when people are supporting companies, it's kind of like raising a kid. There's a lot of different things that they need, and it's kind of like a village raises a child. And so if people were deciding between them, I guess we kind of have access to the entire Stanford community, which is the most powerful entrepreneurial network in the world. I think you can't really argue with that. Or one maybe could.
Somewhere somebody at Harvard Business School is spitting out their coffee.
Yeah, well, we'll show them
listen,
our numbers.
They're in they're in first place on a national basis. They're in like 5th place in Silicon Valley in terms of success. If you would actually put, broad stroke success of the individuals in life, probably Harvard would have the...
Oh yeah, Harvard overall is much more successful from just monetary wealth. So the community...
But you know what? They're kind of bankrupt when it comes to actually what they're putting in the world, because they're probably all like Goldman folks, just manipulating spreadsheets and taking all the work that's actually occurring here in the Valley and just manipulating it on spreadsheets. No offense to Harvard Business School graduates.
Yeah, but back to your question on YC versus us.
Yes,
I don't want to bash you Harvard too badly. So we give, we're, excellent community, amazing customized mentorship. It's very individualized to what that company needs. And we do give $100,000 of free stuff, right? Free web credits and all that, all that.
That standard
services.
stack of Amazon Web Services, Rackspace.
And then our fund is...
Yeah, this is where it gets exciting.
Regardless of the round they raise, we'll put 10% in.
Wow.
And so there's objective criteria. So you have to have at least $500,000 raised and 30% from professional investors.
Got it. Okay, so mom can't put in $500 and say this company's worth $100 million, and you come in for 10% of that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
No
so
gaming the system.
It has to be professional investors and a certain percentage, but then we'll follow on any round.
Wow.
And it's not discretionary. So we're not saying, oh, well, we know through the program that you guys actually were struggling with this, or you guys are actually the hot one.
Gotcha.
It's any of them can have access to this 10%.
Wow. So you're not picking favorites. You're not cherry picking. You're just saying, hey, if other qualified investors, people who've done it before for some number of years are in, we're in.
Yeah.
For a little bit, for a taste.
Yeah. And so on the YC thing, we have companies that have done both.
And what do they report back to you, I wonder?
I think it's that the YC partners are really excellent at product help.
Yeah, for
they're
sure.
They're really great product advisors.
Yeah, smart
and you can get a really significant valuation bump with YC. With us, it's more around personal development. The founders go through and they're like, wow, my life has changed.
Yeah.
I'm more effective as an individual. I have this really strong community. And so it's not really we help with the fundraising and all the stuff YC does, but they're really excellent at that, the brand and the fundraising and product help. And we're really good at that, but I think we're much better at other things. And so there hasn't really been too much of a conflict. And the other thing is when a founder's kind of saying, okay, how much equity am I going to give up to accelerators where we don't charge anything?
You can't beat free. And I have to say, like, if you were going to do it and you were picking between YCombinator, Techstars, StartX, it would seem to me the logical thing to do would be to do StartX first, get all that knowledge, and then evaluate where you're at a mere 10 weeks later, and then apply to YCombinator, Techstars, Launch Incubator, whatever it is, Rock Health, Highway 1. And then you could actually be so far ahead, I think you can negotiate terms with those places because they do negotiate terms.
Yeah, although we do have a good number of companies that go from those programs to us.
The other way around.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of incubator hopping going on.
Yeah,
what do you think that
is.
trend is about?
I think it's founders being worried that they don't have enough resources. And so I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing.
Yes, but to say, does that negative signal a weak founder that they're bouncing from place to place? I've heard that argument from people that if you've gone to 2 or 3 of these, maybe you're just not ready to be a founder.
Yeah, theoretically, although the founders I know who have done it aren't weak.
Okay.
So
they're savvy, or are they just addicted to community-based stuff or getting better? Maybe they just like coaching.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. If you can get easy funding and a bunch of resources, that's pretty nice. And so a lot of angels will, they'll give you a certain amount of cash and resources for funding. And so accelerators can be an alternative to angel funding.
They can be, yeah. And you do come out on the other side with this halo.
Yeah.
You were talking about how YCombinator companies get this huge valuation premium.
Yeah. Although I will say Stanford companies get that as well, overall.
They do? But YCombinator companies get a little bit more, don't they?
Depends. Yeah. Okay. I mean, as an average.
As a class,
sure, Sure, as a class.
Why does YCombinator get that huge premium, do you think? And do you think that is a good thing, a bad thing for entrepreneurs? Leaving the angel investors aside, right? Because they're all big girls and big boys. They can decide what valuation they want to. But for those entrepreneurs specifically, what are your thoughts on it?
So I don't know about whether or not like look, having a brand opens doors. And it's not just for funding, it's for recruiting, it's for partnerships, for sales. It's a legitimizing factor. And so for us, when we have kind of like you go through StartX, you're the cream of the crop of Stanford, internationally, that really helps our companies. And so YC having that brand and us having that brand really helps the companies. I think on separately, like our companies get really high valuations as well on average. We're like a step function up from all other Stanford founders.
Yeah.
And so I think...
Oh, that's interesting. So if you take Stanford founders who went independently through AngelList, whatever, and then you compare them through the StartX ones, the StartX would be some percentage higher? Generally? Yeah,
so we're at least $1 million on average higher than the rest. And so... The tricky thing about having too high of a valuation is just the risk of downside, right?
Yep.
And so next round, if you have a down round, if you can't meet the milestones, it can be a little bit risky. That's all.
Yeah.
And so
I've seen that happen a lot with YCombinator companies of late.
Oh, okay.
I look at all of them. They tend to be, as I told one, your valuation is higher than the valuation I invested in Uber and Thumbtack in combined. Because I invested in those companies at like $4 or $5 million each in valuation, and this person wanted like a 9, and I was like 8 or 9, and I was like, your progress is far beneath where those two are at when I invested in them. That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so there's
but
an
it
argument.
just seemed weird that they're like doubling their valuations, and when I talked to them, a bunch of them reported they went to YCombinator to double their valuation, which I told Sam Altman, who's a friend, like, you may want to rein this in a little bit, because if the reason to go and the reason people want to go is strictly to increase valuation, that's not a good reason, I don't think. I think the reason should be you want the help to make a better product, to get better product market fit, et cetera. But to just optimize for valuation, it seems like a little bit of a hack.
Yeah. Founders are always opportunistic and looking to get as many resources. The other thing, though, is outcomes are binary in venture.
They are.
And
explain what that means to people who don't know what that means.
So if you, for venture capital firms investing, getting a $100 million exit, $300 million exit doesn't really move the needle on their fund returns. And for the founders, it'll make the founders rich.
Oh, yeah.
But generally, when people are investing, they really only want the $500 million to multi-billion-dollar company, because that'll return their fund, which they have to pay back to their LPs, their investors first, before they get carry, which they get a percentage of the proceeds. And so when a lot of people are investing, the tricky thing is that if you're haggling over valuation, then you may not get into the Ubers or the deals, because they'll go to the other person with the higher valuation. And ultimately, as an investor, you don't really care about the failures. You only care about the one or two huge successes.
Yeah.
And so, sure, that makes it an environment that's conducive to companies that may not be that multi-billion-dollar company. It allows them to get those higher valuations, which actually may hurt them. But on the other side,
it doesn't hurt the investor all that much. What hurts them is missing the big Uber.
It hurts the investors that don't have the big one.
Right.
Because then their portfolio is not great.
Yeah, I've seen people turn down Twitter, Zynga, Uber, and Thumbtack over valuation issues. In those cases, all four of those companies had people turn them down over valuation, and then later, of course, turned out to be very wrong. Yeah. Because they, didn't want to make that bet. Of course, if there's enough companies out there that you can make 2 bets for every one or 3 bets for every one YCombinator bet, if you have great deal flow, then you get to place 3 bets on the roulette wheel as opposed to 1. It's probably a better idea.
Yeah.
That's always my sort of comeback to it. But you have to have deal flow.
You have to have good deal flow.
Which I don't think everybody has, which I think is kind of a unique thing for the
being a venture capitalist, although it seems glamorous, is extremely difficult to be successful. It's a really hard job. And so if you're actually getting carried, hard to actually be a successful venture capitalist.
Sure. Yeah.
Not hard in if you have nice management fees, you can get $1 million.
Yeah, it's not a hard life.
No, not a hard life. It's hard to be successful in venture.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks just go sideways, right? They return what the market does, whatever. They don't actually break out. So how big is the fund that you have, and then who are the LPs in it, and how does that drive decision making, et cetera?
Sure. So it's a partnership with Stanford University, Stanford Healthcare, which is the hospital, and StartX. Mm-hmm. And so the money comes from Stanford Hospital, which is now branded Stanford Healthcare, and Stanford University.
Got it.
And it's just their money. And basically, any company who goes through StartX can take 10% of their funding of their round from this fund, and we always follow on.
It's a $100 million fund, a $10 million fund, a $1 billion fund?
Yeah, so they've allocated, let's say, 200 plus million.
Wow. Over what period of time?
For 3 years.
It's incredible.
So it'll re-up. We're not going to invest that much.
But you have that ability.
We have that ability, yeah. And so the first year was $31 million. And it was 100, how many companies? 106 investments in 80.
So about 250 to 400 each, something like that.
Yeah.
250 to 500 each. So that would be 10% of their $3 million round.
Right.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a 20% carry and a 2%, 3% management fee that you get, correct?
So we actually don't have any this fund is owned and operated by the 3 nonprofits, and so no money goes back to the money goes back to the operating budgets of the nonprofits.
Got it. So if you hit a home run, holy cow.
Yeah, it would be nice for the nonprofit. It would be nice.
You could have a $10 million whatever endowment for StartX.
Right.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we've already had some pretty big exits already, and we have some companies in the $1 billion track.
Wow. So your positions, if you get 20% of those, could be considerable and could meaningfully change the budget. If you do wind up having, let's say magically you hit a Google or something like that, or a Palantir, and you have $50 million, what would you do with that at StartX?
Well, we'd kind of put some in the piggy bank because we're a nonprofit and the valley is cyclical. And so there's going to be a downside. So we're a small nonprofit. Our budget's $2 million, but it's not like that big. We would hire more staff. I think what we're doing now is we historically have only supported people, or kind of had our criteria is you have to be 5 years out of school. You have to have at least one Stanford founder who's 5 years out of school, no more. We've opened that up, so we're accepting anyone from the Stanford alumni community.
Wow! So if a 60-year-old lady who was in there, who just retired, says, "I want to do a startup. Screw it, I don't want to be retired," and she comes in, she could then be accepted to StartX?
Yeah. So we actually
Has that happened?
Yeah. So we've had. So I'll give you an example of this. Well, we have a lot of professors, which they're still at Stanford, but like the head of the Cardiovascular Institute at Stanford went through StartX, and he was over 50. More relevant though, we had a guy, Carl Mehta. He was a partner at a top 10 venture firm. So sold a company for $240 million before, and then went through StartX with his new company.
So he could have been an advisor or a teacher at Stanford. He decided to be a student, essentially.
Well, not a student, but a member of our community, where he can get kind of customized support. And I mean, we've actually had mentors. So do you know Gil Pincina?
Of course, yeah.
So
he's been on the program.
Yeah, so his company, who he co-founded with Yi Lee, Vouch, is in StartX.
Vouch,
yeah.
Vouch, like I vouch for you.
Yeah, it's a financial company.
I would suspect vouch if you're vouching for somebody.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting company.
So I get this has to do with poker, right? You vouch for somebody to be in a poker game. If they don't pay their bill, then you're responsible.
Yeah, it's peer-to-peer lending.
I nailed
vouching. Yeah, exactly. So
this just happened at a poker game I was at. A friend of mine brought a friend. Check this out. It's like a Sopranos episode. And this has to do with people in the Valley. Person brings another professional poker player to a game. It was a charity tournament. After the charity tournament, the cash game breaks out. The guy goes south for 15 dimes, and he can't pay. What now? Who's responsible?
And the professional poker player was sponsoring him?
No, not forget about the professional poker player. This was the person who was in the game was a pro.
Yeah.
But the pro in the game who was in the charity tournament, some other guy brought him. The other guy left. He wasn't there. So he was brought to a charity tournament, but then stayed for the cash game. So everybody assumed this is this guy's guy, therefore he can play in the big boy, big girl cash game. Maybe he can't play in that game, and he lost a used Prius, and now he can't pay for it.
Yikes.
What would StartX do with that? I'm joking. Anyway, it's a total aside. So let me ask you a personal question.
Sure.
Cameron. Who are you in that you have created a Y-Combinator coexister? By which I mean, StartX stands on the same footing as Y-Combinator and Techstars in everybody's opinion I talk to. It's as good. And you are going to live the life of a monk. You're never going to get rich off this. I mean, you're going to have a 6-figure salary. You'll have a comfortable life. You're going to live in Stanford. Are you taking equity in any of these companies? You're going to be on the board of them? Do you even get a taste? Do you put angel money into some of these sometimes? I mean, what is Cameron going to get out of this?
Yeah, so
I feel terrible. You're not going to get rich.
Yeah, I'll be fine. So before this, I actually worked in private equity.
Okay.
And I founded a private equity company, like in $80 million fund. We've invested in a company.
How old are you?
26.
Wait a second. When did you find when you were junior in high school?
No, in college.
So in college, you had a private equity firm for $80 million.
Yeah, it was with some business school professors.
You Doogie Howser or something like that? You have $80 million private equity from your dorm room?
$80 million is kind of small in private equity.
Absolutely, it is. What did you do? You bought like a couple of Dairy Queens or something, and then you flipped them?
We got a storage company, kind of similar to AWS, and put in a guy from the Sloan Business School program, and he's doing it, and it's doing well.
So you did okay with that?
I did okay. I mean, not I'm not rich or anything, but I guess from that experience and from working in Boston in private equity, I realized that I'm really the way I'm successful is if I really focus on things I care about. And I didn't want to I was an actor when I was little and made a bunch of money too. And so I didn't really want to focus on money.
So you literally were Doogie Howser. Were you on a network
I don't have that much money. No.
You were on like I
was on
Saved by the Bell?
On Broadway, actually.
Okay, on Broadway, and you were in?
Les Mis.
Les Mis.
Les Miserables, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm done with my acting days now, but did that when I was younger.
On Broadway?
Yeah, on Broadway.
Literally in Times Square?
Yeah, and then I did like the national tour and traveled around and everything, and so that was awesome.
So you're a gifted guy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, you did Broadway, and now you did private equity, and now you started a Y-Combinator. I mean, you're like a 26-year-old Paul Graham over here. Who can sing? Paul Graham can't sing.
So I guess the answer is, no, I'm not getting any equity in the companies personally. I think what's driven me, and I have a lot left to do in my life.
Yeah.
But what's driven me is that I think that there was a really ineffective way that startups who were actually solving problems were supported. And I thought that if I had $100 million, what would I do? And this is what I would do.
Okay.
And so I would kind of fix that get it going, grow it as much as possible, and then be involved with it for the rest of my life, but still also work on other stuff, which I haven't done yet. I'm not going to do that yet. I'm focused on this for right now. But I mean, we have numbers that are comparable or better than almost anyone else. And we've had companies that have impacted hundreds of thousands of people, saved lives.
See, I think what you need to do is you need to take the fund. And really, in order to run this properly, there needs to be partners in the fund who can figure out the follow-ons or whatever. It's fine for the fund to have a agnostic 10% approach, but to really get returns for these nonprofits, at some point, the fund should have proper managers who make proper decisions on the follow-on funding, because you're going to have pro rata in these companies. You have to make some decisions. You're going to have to work with them.
Well, we actually always follow on right now.
I know, but there needs to be somebody who's really thinking about this.
Yeah.
As a managing partner, and that's where you should eventually wind up, is you should be a managing partner there, and you should just get a little taste, a little carry on it. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what happens in the future. I think...
only so it's sustainable, because what will happen is you're going to have all these great people in your organization, and they're going to get these kind of offers from... Sequoia or Benchmark and Bill Gurley or Chamath at Social Capital or whoever's bouncing around Stanford. They're all going to come in and be like, wow, these StartX employees are tremendous.
Yeah, they are.
The Y-Combinator people are going to go, StartX employees know how to do this? Screw it, let's grab them.
Yeah.
And you're going to have poaching going on, and these guys are going to have unlimited upside here and nonprofit upside here. You got to be a little bit competitive. It's like what happened with Intel Ventures and Google Ventures. They had to incentivize people properly. But anyway.
One thing that's very different from us and a lot of other people is our model is more around facilitating other people helping each other than us giving advice.
That is true.
So we've actually been run mainly by under 25-year-olds. And now we have a bunch of over 30-year-olds, which is awesome.
It's like Logan's Run. You should just have them all when they hit 31. You just send them to rise up to the meat grinder.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't
even know what I'm talking about with Logan's Run, do you?
No idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so Logan's Run is a science fiction film. That's amazing. You got to go home and rent Logan's Run and watch this. It's basically kind of Peter Pan kind of thing. When you get to a certain age, you're no longer needed. And that's it.
Okay.
You'll love it.
Oh, I see.
All of the science fiction that you've seen is inspired in some part by Logan's Run.
Okay. No, I love movies. I'm a cinephile, so I would love
Logan's Run will blow your mind. And if you really want to have your mind blown, there's a film called Silent Running with Bruce Dern. And in it, you will see characters that literally are copied in Star Wars.
Oh, really?
A film from 1970 or 1973. Star Wars came 76, 77. You'll literally see things copied from there. It's amazing. Silent Running, Bruce Dern, and Logan's Run. I forgot the guy's name. Famous actor. Michael. It's a guy from, it's an English actor.
Yeah.
He's amazing. Go look it up. Producer Jackie will look up who's the star of Logan's Run. It's a really cool movie. Okay, so...
And look, appreciate the advice. Look, one thing that we've always done is we kind of think of ourselves as like a product company ourselves. And so we're constantly figuring out new ways of doing things and, Let me ask
you a question about mentors.
Yes.
What makes a good mentor in this model? And how do you vet the mentors? Because I've been thinking about this myself for my own incubator. And a lot of times the people who want to be mentors are people I don't want mentoring the companies. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that Michael York, by the way, for those people who are wondering? I just remembered it. And by I just remembered it, that means Jackie put it on the courtesy monitor for me. Michael York in Silent Running. What makes a great advisor? Should you give advisors equity? And if so, under what circumstances and what terms?
That's a good question. So all of the advisors in our program don't get any equity. And so what we do
But they could go on to a relationship with the company possibly, and they must.
They invest, and there's advisor shares and all that good stuff. So for us, we actually do a lot of work on mentor vetting. And so we have a big wait list, and we're mainly looking for people who are kind of their incentives are aligned with helping the founders. Their primary incentive isn't investing. And so they're interested in giving back. And usually those type of people give you unbiased advice.
Right.
And so
they don't have a horse in the race.
Yeah, they give you unbiased advice. They're not worried about kind of what you're thinking. And so for us, and it's not just the people who are good at startups or who are experts that are good mentors. Like mentorship is a specific skill. And so, we've had people who get offended by us saying, we need to do a mentor evaluation of you. And they're like, what? Look at my resume. And we're like, okay, like Jerry Yang is a good friend of the program, and I know him really well. And we even did like
co-founder of Yahoo.
Yeah. We even did just saw the people he had mentored before and kind of put him through the quote-unquote vetting process.
You put Jerry Yang through a mentoring process. That's like asking Marlon Brando to read for the part of, like Superman's dad.
Well, no, it's different because just because you're a good founder doesn't mean you're a good mentor.
I know that. But still, you literally had...
Oh, and he's an amazing guy. And so he was completely like, oh, I love this. I'm so glad you're doing this, because he wants to be around other people who are serious about what they're doing. And
you had Meryl Streep read for a part. Is basically what you did. Meryl Streep would like you to come in and read for The Devil Wears Prada. She'd be like, I'm Meryl Streep. Do you know how many Oscars I have? Okay, so Jerry Yang comes in, and you talk to the people he's mentored, and you try to assess how good he is as a mentor.
Yeah, because there's mentors who tell you what to do aren't good mentors.
Unpack that.
So the advice that people give is highly contextual. And so it may be really true, whatever advice they give you, and it was true in the situation they were in the time they were in the market they were in.
Yeah.
And so, it's really valid advice. But the problem with, and the kind of interesting thing with technology is that things change so rapidly that what they give you isn't necessarily relevant, useful, and maybe damaging now.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jerry Yang. Let me explain to you how to create a hierarchical directory for you to get through the web more efficiently. And it's like, have you heard of search engines?
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But he's a good mentor.
But he's a good mentor. Yeah.
Why is he a good mentor?
Because he asks questions. And he'll say, him and other good mentors will say, this is what happened in my situation. These are the kind of attributes that existed at that time. Mm-hmm. Try to pull out some fundamental lesson from there. Then don't just believe it. Test it.
Got it.
Test it, and then you can see if it actually works for you. That's one part of it. And the other part of it is just asking them questions. Because a lot of times when you're in the weeds and things and there's so much uncertainty building a company, you just get kind of muddled up in your head. And so you just really need people to ask you the right questions, and then you kind of figure it out yourself.
There's a certain founder pinball that occurs, I find, where like these founders are like these like pinballs, and they get put in the machine, and they go bing, 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 because everybody's giving them so much advice.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes, is it not true that there are 3, 4, 5 ways to solve a problem? And that really what the founder should do is find the solution that works best for them and they are most motivated to pursue. How do you keep these founders from losing their innovation when they're getting so much mentoring?
Yeah, well, we kind of beat this into their heads that everything they're told is right and wrong.
Right and wrong.
It's right and wrong. It's what I said. It's accurate for what that person's context was.
Got it.
But it's not necessarily correct. Like holistically, it's not correct for your situation. And so one of the actual lessons we teach people is how to kind of synthesize all this information and not get kind of scattered.
Yeah, the pinball, sort of metaphor. So what is
just making it clear,
what is the advice there then? Because so first you have to look at all of them and say, hey, contextualize it. But then when you have 20 different people's opinion about how to go from A to B, what is the next step there? Do you look for trends? Do you try to eliminate options?
Yeah, well, first of all, you need to make sure you're getting advice on the thing that's important for you coming up, not on everything.
Got it.
Because that's just way distracting. And I mean, this is why people at YC, which I like what they say, and we say this as well, is around like you don't need all this mentorship. And the thing is actually, when I'm facing a problem right in front of me, it would be great to get a perspective on that. And so it's about focusing that advice, hearing a bunch of kind of different experiences, and then you just need to think critically and not be a sheep and make your own decision around what's useful for you there. Prioritize the things that may work and try one. The funny thing is that usually there's like you said, 5 different ways to do it, and if they just execute one of those well, it'll work.
Yeah.
And so it's just about like the problem is people waste a lot of time trying to think of what the right thing is, what the right solution is, rather than just kind of doing a quick analysis and then just going at it.
That's so correct. I have to say, I think that's one of the great things about what Steve Blank and Eric Ries have done with this lean startup movement is, the amount of time it takes to debate it and religiously want to be right and all this ego and energy that goes into being right. it's so much easier to just do a little simple test. Just ask yourself, how do I test my way to victory? And if you look at you're coming across the Atlantic Ocean trying to find the new world. I mean, if you want to sit there and debate it, you're going to run out of lemons and everybody's going to get scurvy and go mad. Sometimes you got to just keep forging ahead, I find.
Yeah, that's right.
So are you like a Mensa candidate or something like that? How smart are you, man? God, you get this to 26 and you have this dialed in. Where are you going to be at 36? My God, you're an animal, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
There's a lot of success at 26. And, listen, I know a lot of successful people, but this is a pretty extraordinary thing to have built. And it's kind of been flying under the radar, hasn't it?
Yeah. So I guess my focus when building companies has always been create some product market fit, and then get your customers to love it, and then they'll talk about it. And so, like you said, you talk in the Valley, and you talk maybe to other founders, and they say really excellent things about us. But we're not broadcasting that from the roof. We're just kind of focusing on delivering good value.
Yeah.
I've been the VP of marketing of StartX because our staff has been really small.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I remember 3 years ago coming to one of the cocktail parties and hearing about you guys, and there was a little bit of buzz, but it was yeah, okay, I don't know, StartX, you probably want to go to Y Combinator. And then all of a sudden something flipped in the last 2 years where some of these companies are doing really well. So one of them is Life 360. What is Life 360 about? Let's go through a couple of the portfolio companies before we wrap up here.
Yeah, so Life 360 is the family social network.
Huh.
And so they actually have more users than Foursquare, a lot more. They're at about 50 million families on it. And they're growing about 2 million families a week or a month.
Wow.
And they're basically saying, okay, well, there's a different families don't want a customized Facebook. They want a utility to help run their family better.
Yeah.
And so, so it helps families do that.
Yeah, they launched, I think, at the launch festival. I remember meeting them, and it's still going. Now, what about QGotix robotics?
QGotix.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this was actually the first company that ever applied to StartX. And it was a Teal Fellow. He went through the Teal Fellowship after StartX.
Explain to me what the Teal Fellowship is, because they've all seen the Silicon Valley HBO show version of it, but tell us the real version.
Yeah, so Peter Thiel gives $100,000 to a bunch of people not to go to college and work on startups and other things. It's kind of like an accelerator. They have a bunch of sessions where they hang out with each other and help each other. And then the Founders Fund guys, Peter Thiel's fund, they give them advice. So Tom Courier, he's the guy who founded this company. He built this up, and basically what it does is it takes an industry that has very little innovation, which is the clean tech industry, specifically solar fields, and it applies robotics to it to drastically reduce the costs to where it's almost comparable to the cost of coal. And so they're making operating in a solar field comparable to the cost of burning coal.
Which is amazing. Solar is twice as expensive as coal, let's say. This sort of bridges that gap. And it's doing it through this little robot that I see in the video here?
Yeah.
Or is that one of their early solutions?
No, that's what it, so basically what it does is it has, in these solar fields, there used to be a motor on every one of these, and there used to be these massive panels. And so they have a robot go and move them to actually kind of focus on the sun to have optimal efficiency. Yep. And because of that, they're able to reduce the infrastructure and
you don't need a robot
costs.
For each one.
Yes, exactly. You don't need a robot for each one.
Or
so
a computer.
It's just a cost play.
Yeah, you have one computer going and moving 10,000 cells or something.
Right.
Although at some point the computer and the robot will be cheap enough that you can do it on each one. But anyway, they're figuring out something to make these things more efficient. Now, how is that company doing?
They have millions and millions of revenue, and they're doing really well.
And here's QGotix.
They raise a lot of money.
QGotix, which these guys also launched at the festival. Wow, this is good. We have a good. Yeah, two of these companies were at the launch festival, which is great. This company was great. They were at the Launch EDU event. They, if I remember correctly, are building little stories that have these 3D, beautiful Pixar-level animations. Right. But you're learning, and you can see, step by step, here you see it, how people, I guess, are learning.
So it's for kids. Skills. It's like a Pixar-type story for a kid, and as they watch the story, they play games. and educational games. And what it does is it allows parents to actually, it not only teaches the kids, but it allows parents to understand their cognitive development. Yeah. And so the parents can engage with their kid. And with a lot of these educational toys, there isn't like really intense engagement, but it's a Pixar story. Like this guy PJ founded a 1,000-person animation studio that does Disney animation.
Yeah.
And so he's able to, and he has one of the heads of Pixar stories on their advisory board, and so they're able to actually do some really engaging stuff for kids.
It's super cool. I remember these guys demoing this, and it's like you get this nice heads-up display as a parent where in the story she builds this, whatever, she's building a telescope, but then you can see, oh, here's what they've learned, and it's adaptive, so if they already know how to do math, it's going to move them on to geometry. If they're geometry, move them on to the next thing. Really clever stuff. And I'm assuming, what's this one now? This is SCT or something? What is this one?
Stem cell theranostics.
Okay, so I see like this is a rug that is somebody spilled water on or something. What is this?
Yeah, so these are actually heart cells. And they're beating. Clearly. And they're in a dish. In a little petri dish.
Okay.
And basically what this company does is it takes your skin cells and it can turn them into stem cells, then into heart cells. Like actually beating heart cells in a dish. And it can screen for drug toxicity.
Got it.
And the problem is a lot of these drugs get released that kill hundreds of thousands of people.
Right, that kill people first.
Yeah, then
you find out.
Test for edge cases. Yeah. And so they test for the edge cases by killing them.
Genius.
And so these guys can screen out those drugs and save billions and billions of dollars of clinical trials.
And hopefully people's lives.
And people's lives.
Oh, and here's Ruminate. I remember Ruminate. We had them at the launch festival, EDU as well. This is a very clever company. Girls doing all these like cool robotic projects.
Yeah, and so the founders of this are two MIT, Caltech, Stanford engineers, and they wanted to have more women in the engineering discipline. And so what they do is they have these really interactive kind of Lego-like building blocks where you can build circuits into them.
Yeah.
And so you can learn about electricity and electrical engineering by actually building dollhouses and whatever else you want to build.
A little bit controversial. I remember at the time when we had them, people were like, oh, you're making it pink, and oh, you're making it appealing to girls. It's insulting. And it was like, okay, but society and all these TV shows are telling them to be into Barbie and having a 5-year-old daughter. There does seem to be, like, they're inundated with princesses and all their stuff.
Yeah, and
it does seem like a pretty good hack.
Exactly. I mean, it actually is something that's realistic that moves the needle. And so you actually, you got to be realistic when you're building a company.
Yeah, I think.
And they were number one on the Time magazine toy list.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And the founders are women, obviously.
Yes.
And so they made this decision. It is I always find it amazing, like how critical some women are, other women founders. The women founders seem to be under like this massive criticism, and a lot of times it comes from some other women. What do you think about female founders and how that's changing? Do you have diversity statistics for your incubator, and how do you move the needle where we all want it to be, which is a more diverse and just world?
Right. Well, that's part of our nonprofit mission, is to bring more meritocracy to the startup ecosystem. And so our numbers, our number of women have actually gone down. We started at 25%.
Wow.
25%.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. But then, and that was right out of school. And then as we started getting people 5 years out, 10 years out, later stage companies, it dropped. And now it's at around 17%, which is still way above a lot of people.
Well, it's way above the average of founders,
But it's not, it's not 50-50.
Right.
And so I think.
Well, there is a certain opt-in nature to entrepreneurship.
Right.
So there are some things that are outside of your control. It may be that on a gender basis, we may not have yet 50-50 of women opting into entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And
for whatever reasons that occur before incubators and accelerators occur, like education system prior to graduating Stanford.
Right. Yeah, and I would say from our numbers, we have a much greater percentage of the female founders that apply that we accept. And we have...
Oh, wow. So you accept on a higher basis than the application. Do you attribute that to them being better?
I think there's...
Or is there some mission where you're trying to encourage more women by accepting more?
Yeah, so actually we don't use any sort of industry stage demographic to select the companies or the founders. It's just looking at them as individuals. I think it's that the women who apply are on average more serious and more legit
Yeah, so you'll have guys
and like
apply who aren't as legit. They're just taking a swing at the bat.
Exactly.
But the women who apply, they're super dedicated and a little bit more considered.
Yeah, probably because it's more of a social barrier for them to actually make that leap than a guy.
Yeah, I have to say, the women founders that I've invested in and the ones I meet, they all seem to be on average, even though the number of them is lower, the on average execution level is higher.
Yeah.
I agree with that, actually. That does correlate with my experience without me knowing why, because I'm not a social scientist.
Yeah, and I mean, we thought about kind of just accepting more female founders at some point, but I think like 70% of our staff are women.
Yeah.
And like the person who founded StartX Med is a woman, and they were like, no way. We have to be even across the board here. Let's not do that.
How much of a meritocracy, putting StartX aside and the statistics, which you're working hard on, with good intent, I am certain. How much of a meritocracy do you feel Silicon Valley is today in 2015? In that, if you have traction, it does seem like anybody with traction gets funding, but maybe before traction, pre-traction, maybe not everybody gets funding equally. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, more important than funding, I think, is the support and people actually spending their time helping you. I mean, look, Pinterest, I'm shocked how few people know that Pinterest was struggling for like 2.5 years before they took off.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
hey, by the way, Twitter too.
Yeah. And so
it was like a year or two in the wilderness.
So I think that there's still a much greater nature over nurture feeling in Silicon Valley. I've always believed that you can take an individual and help them achieve their potential, but Silicon Valley is very unique in that it's okay if you screw up.
Right.
You'll still get funded. Where like in Japan or even in the East Coast sometimes, if you fail, then you're kind of
over.
Yeah, maybe you can't do it again.
Yeah, and in Europe, they're just look at entrepreneurs taking risks as like, they look at them like they're, I don't know, like they're scammers.
Yeah, but I think that the challenge with Silicon Valley is that a lot of people just kind of gravitate towards the people who are already showing signs of success rather than thinking about, okay, let's look at this individual, and does this individual have the capacity to create a lot of impact? And there's still like a really big like finance, risk mitigation, diversifying your portfolio mindset from investors, which makes sense for their business model. But the problem is investors are also the people who are the mentors and teachers for startups. And where on the education side, it's just about potential, not about like the I'd say a lot of academia is still anti-industry or less friendly with industry.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And so there still isn't, I think, enough focus on saying, okay, if this individual has some capacity, then let's support them. So for instance, we had a company called SixDot, which made a really cheap and efficient, way cheaper and way nicer designed Braille labeler. And it got out there. Stevie Wonder was an investor. They helped
sounds like
tons of blind people. Yeah, and it wasn't a billion-dollar company, but it doesn't mean that person who would create that amount of impact doesn't deserve some or doesn't need support.
Right.
And so I think from a meritocracy perspective, that the ones who are actually successfully showing or showing success, yes, they get support. So if they're not in the right social club or they're not in the the old boys club, they'll still get support. So that's different from a lot of places. I think it could be even better if people focus on kind of what potential individuals have.
Awesome. It's well said. And so continued success with StartX. How many people, just in closing here, how many people do you accept for, based on applications? So do you get 100 applications for every person you accept, 50?
We're at around a 9% acceptance rate.
Okay. Because you have a smaller pool because it has to be somebody who went to Stanford.
Yeah. And so it's we'll have almost 1,000 teams apply a year, which are just Stanford though.
Wow, mind-blowing.
Just Stanford alumni.
Has any other school cribbed this and copied it yet? Berkeley?
Oh, yeah, a lot of people have tried.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And we give them advice.
Who's done it well? Anybody doing it well? Penn?
Berkeley's actually doing something interesting, I think. Yeah. I think MIT, Harvard are kind of doing something interesting. The problem is not the problem, but their focus is actually mainly on people in school. And then there's the venture firms. And so no one's kind of either been crazy enough to do this as a nonprofit, like next to the university, focus on education. So,
hey, when I think of Cameron and StartX, I think of crazy because you know what? You're crazy like a fox. I think you created this thing. It's done tremendous. Yes, you've given up short-term gain for yourself, but you're 26. I think you could go on from this and create the StartX Venture Fund as something that you do commercially while maintaining this and having it be a nonprofit. But you should really be an investor. You're going to learn a hell of a lot. Somebody should give you $10 million to go do your own angel investing and just be a little bit more involved with these companies. You'll do tremendous. Anyway. I think you're brilliant. Seriously, dude. I mean,
Thank you.
When we talked a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about what you've done, I was just super impressed. I mean, I see everything essentially, in this industry, and I have not seen somebody give so much and take so little. And so for that, I commend you. I mean, it's truly impressive. Honestly. And for such a young guy. Look at me. I'm like an old man now. You know what, kid? This is really good for a young whippersnapper. I am turning into my grandfather. All right, Cameron. Great job. Everybody follow CGTMAN. And follow StartX and visit startx.stanford.edu and apply and do great. And let me also thank WeWork for hosting us. You guys have been so great. Thank you for this beautiful studio. And Bryce, my chief of staff, and Nathan in operations, and Jacob and Jackie, Luke, Matt, Julian, and Matt for keeping the lights on. Sales is going great. And John on the launch ticker, feel better. I know you've been under the weather, but come back stronger. And the launch festival support team, Matt and Brett, are doing a great job. 8,500 people RSVP'd. Probably be sold out by the time you get here with 10,000 people. And you're going to be a judge, right? We're going to get you to be a judge. You want to be a judge at the festival?
Sure.
You'd be like one of the youngest judges in history.
Come be a...
No, I want to have you, have you CTO do the hackathon.
Yeah, exactly.
So have him do the hackathon, and then you do the big stage.
All right.
Just what I need, another white man on stage. Honestly, it's like really I have to work very hard to have diversity because so many, the numbers are so off when it comes to the venture community that it's very hard to, and my team has done, I just want to thank my team for the diversity statistics have been great this year. I think we have 25% female right now on the speaker list, which is really, it's hard to do because a lot of the female speakers are like Marissa and Cheryl are so busy. That when I asked Cheryl, she's like, I love to do it. I'm just jammed. I have to be at my office, and I can't take a day off. And there's so many people who are asking them to do every single event. So we've got to work really hard to find them. If you have any great suggestions, always email them to team@launch.co. Tell us who do you think should speak at the event. Always looking for great speakers. Follow at TWI Startups. Follow me. I'm at Jason. Follow at Launch, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.